Hands down, this might be the most perfect video game ever made. Since Nintendo Switch Online launched its first tier of online gaming emulation back in December of 2018, the service has varied in perception and opinion. On one hand, it's extremely affordable, costing as low as $20 for an entire year at the lowest entry and up to $50 for the year at the expansion pack tier. On the other hand, it's taken a bit of time for the service to really beef up its offerings. It first launched with only a handful of games for the original Nintendo and Super Nintendo, leaving people wondering, where are all the other classic systems and all the other classic games? Sure, this service is affordable, but is it worth it? Well, since its launch, it's definitely beefed up its offerings, where the lowest tier offers a cornucopia of classic games for the NES, Super Nintendo, and Game Boy, along with cloud saves, a mobile phone app, which, let's be honest, isn't great, and special sales and promotional offerings. And the expansion pack tier gives gamers access to a bevy of games from the N64, Game Boy Advance, Sega Genesis, and a ton of free DLC to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and other first-party Nintendo games on the Switch. Now again, compared to competitors such as Game Pass, which can cost gamers anywhere between $120 to $200 annually, and PS Plus, which ranges between $120 and $210 annually, Nintendo Switch Online seems like a bargain. But besides some core features such as cloud saves, is the service really worth it? Well, if it is, to me, it comes down to the games you can play. So I'm going to spend today talking about what I believe are the top 10 best games of the Nintendo Switch Online service, and ultimately why, if you're on the fence, this might be the service for you. Starting off at number 10, and perhaps higher on the list than some of you may have expected, is the all-time classic Super Mario Bros. 3 for the NES. This game right here might be the reason why I'm a gamer. I kid you not, one of my earliest memories ever was me sitting on my family's old couch in our old apartment watching my dad play this game. It captivated me back then, and it still holds up to this day. Everything about it, from the amazing power-ups, brilliant level design, the overworld map, the secrets, it's just top-tier platforming. And while there were a few ways to play this on Nintendo Switch Online, with their Super NES version Super Mario All-Stars Edition and the Super Mario Advance 2 GBA Edition, I still think this is the one to go with. Sure, it might not have the remastered assets, but it's still perfect for what it aims to do. Also, now that I think about it, is this one of the first games to ever get remastered? With the All-Stars version and the GBA version? I think it might be. At number 9, a game that came late in the lifespan of the Super Nintendo, about 11 months before the N64, but phenomenal nonetheless, and that's Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. This is a game that speaks to the idea that solid art direction can make a timeless-looking video game. Its coloring book, almost Crayola-like scribble style, is still a joy to play through, and it stands as a wonderful twist to the classic Mario formula. In this one, you're Yoshi taking care of a small, mustache-less Bambino Mario. Hey, whoa! Whoa, 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 whoa. This is inaccurate. Everyone knows Italian men come out of the womb with a full mustache and a bag of mozzarella. Boom, hey. Anyways, as I was saying, you take care of baby Mario as you're on a mission to rescue Luigi from Kamek and Bowser. It's basically one long escort mission, but unlike most escort missions, this game is actually fun. There's great gameplay, great shape-shifting power-ups, and a phenomenal soundtrack, and with the added bonus of the Super FX chip that was originally used in the cartridge for this game, the designers were able to add some pretty nifty 3D-like bending effects throughout it, which made for some pretty epic boss battles. And also, we got this commercial. This commercial is baked into my head, and honestly, looking back at it, I can't see Nintendo doing something like this again. I mean, just look at this. 2002 was a big year for Samus. It marked her first return to gaming since 1994's Super Metroid, with a near simultaneous release of Metroid Prime and Metroid Fusion launching only a day apart in North America. And for number 8, we're going to be talking about Metroid Fusion, a darn near flawless entry in the Metroid series. Now, to be fair, this is one of the more linear Metroid games out there, but it's because more so than past 2D entries, this one was even more story-focused, and I think that's a fair trade-off. Overall, this game satisfies every itch and desire you want from a Metroidvania, with great combat, extremely satisfying exploration, and while this game isn't as quick and flashy as its sequel on the Switch, Metroid Dread, I still believe this game holds up just fine. At number 7, it's the king himself, Donkey Kong, specifically Donkey Kong III. This isn't your dad's DK, this is your dad's DK's grandson, which makes your dad's DK Cranky Kong? I think. Anyways, Donkey Kong Country changed the game when it launched in 1994. At the time, Nintendo was in a hot and heavy console war against the Sega Genesis. Nintendo wanted something to put to shame that fancy blast processor Sega was always talking about. In comes Rare, the British developer who had recently spent a fancy ton of cash for some state-of-the-art Silicon Graphics Challenge 3D rendering workstations. I should mention, at the time they cost about £80,000 or about $100,000 US, which in today's world, that's about $222,000 per computer, per workstation. Either way, Nintendo saw this technology and they were impressed with what Rare could do with it. They gave Rare the rights to use their DK IP, which had been roughly defunct for almost a decade, and my gosh, did this bet pay off. Donkey Kong Country would go in to change the game with its pre-rendered graphics, brilliant gameplay, and music. Listen, if you don't listen to aquatic ambiance at least once a week, I think there's something wrong with you. Now, I will say I'm kind of cheating at this spot in the list because I'm combining Donkey Kong Country 1 with Donkey Kong Country 2, a game that I think is near equal in its quality. DK Country 2 came out a year later and it has all of the great gameplay of the first with some new characters and playing style. Coming in hot, heavy, and reeking of garlic, at number 6, it's the infamous Italian treasure hunter, Wario. Man, when Wario came onto the scene in the 90s, I saw myself in him. He is literally the equivalent of my video game spirit animal. And his games, while inspired by his Italian paisone, Mario, were fantastic new takes on the platforming genre. They were almost more puzzle-like platformers, with you having to explore levels multiple times and finish different routes based on various unlocks and abilities you would gain along the way. You also had this cool aspect where Wario had to take advantage of his enemies' abilities to gain access to new areas as well. If Wario had a donut thrown at him, he'd eat it, gain a ton of weight. I guess he had a slow metabolism, which is something else him and I share in common, and then he'd use that weight to burst through previously unavailable areas. And while there is a critical path or main story you can complete in this game, all the Wario games, this one included, had an added bonus of a ton of extra treasures you could find and unlock. In fact, out of the 100 treasures in Wario Land 3, you only needed 48 of them to complete the game. And I always loved how these games had that aspect of replayability baked right into them. At number 5, this might be my most played game ever on the Game Boy. Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. Everything about this game was phenomenal in my opinion. One, it was a major improvement over Super Mario Land 1 in terms of look and feel. But two, my gosh, this tiny little world is just full of charm and good times. From the overworld itself, from the macro zone to the pumpkin zone, the space zone, the music, this may be my most beaten game of all time. And for an added bonus, it's when the world was introduced to Wario himself, who blasts onto the scene as the villain who's taken over Mario's castle. You'll journey throughout a ton of amazing levels in this game, take on some fantastic boss battles like the 3 little pigs, collect all the coins, and go and face down Wario himself. My gosh, I love this game. Flying in at number 4, it's everybody's favorite bear and bird combination, Banjo and Kazooie. Now, full disclosure, I never played this game back in the day for the N64. I was always a Mario guy, and while I had friends who heaped tons of praise on Banjo, if I wasn't playing Mario 64, I was either playing GoldenEye or Shadows of the Empire or Mario Kart or some other game. But I finally picked it up back in 2021 on the Xbox, and I understood right away why this game was so universally praised. It's perhaps one of the most well-made collectathon 3D platformers of all time. It's not too big, but it ain't small. It has a fun, colorful world with what at the time was a brand new IP, and it's just full of magic and charm. If you haven't played this game yet, I don't know what to tell you. You've been missing out, and you should change it right now. Like, stop watching this video and go play Banjo. Just stop. Coming in at number 3, perhaps one of the most beloved Zelda games ever, Ocarina of Time. I remember exactly where I was when I first played this game. In fact, I remember exactly where I was when I first saw Link go into the Temple of Time and transform from his young form to his adult form. Heck, I remember who was sitting next to me to tell me how to do it, my neighbor Neil at the time. Not enough great things can be said about this game, from it being a brilliant first attempt at Zelda in the 3D realm, to the music, to the gameplay, and the dungeon design. In fact, while I love, and I mean love, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I still wish they somehow found a way to incorporate the dungeon design brought to life in this game in their newer Zeldas as well. I spent hours and hours playing and replaying this game, and I always felt like there was more to explore, more to discover, and more to unlock. It's an amazing game packed full of mystery, wonder, secrets, and just so much more. Now, if you're a newer fan of the series brought in by Breath of the Wild or Tears, go back and play this game. It's widely considered one of the best games of all time, and for good reason. You're not going to be disappointed. Many of you are going to start calling me a Zelda stan because at number 2, we have Link to the Past. And honestly, I fully embrace that moniker. Zelda is my favorite game series of all time, and Link to the Past set the groundwork for everything we know and love about Zelda from the 90s and beyond. From its fundamental formula of completing new dungeons, unlocking new items and abilities, and being able to progress further in the world, basically a top-down Metroid game, to really cementing all of the lore and wonder of the world of Hyrule in, at the time, a modern presentation. Unlike its original game on the NES, this one was much more linear, but it used that to its advantage to tell a superb story, not just through exposition, but through the world around the player. Now, I played this game a ton as a kid. It was also a bit above me at the time in terms of my age, but that didn't stop me. I played and replayed, and while it wasn't the first Zelda game I ever beat, that goes to Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, it is my favorite in the classic top-down formula. You don't have Ocarina without this game, and I really wish Nintendo would revisit it and give it an updated treatment similar to what they did with Link's Awakening on the Switch. Because everything about it, wait for it, is legendary. At number 1, it's Super Mario World. Hands down, this might be the most perfect video game ever made. Everything about it is flawless. It was the perfect evolution to Super Mario Bros. 3, building on that classic platforming action with the newer overworld presentation, and it just takes all of it to a whole new level. From the brilliant new enemies to the amazing level design, fun and charming locales throughout the map, I can't get enough of this game. Whenever I think of a 2D Mario game, this is the apex. This is the granddaddy. This is the game that all 2D Mario should strive to be. In fact, Mario Wonder in many ways is such a good game because it has a lot in common with this entry. It offers incentive for the player to explore the levels and map overall, and for good reason because there are a ton of secret exits and there's so much fun to discover and unlock. Heck, even how some of the early secrets will take you right through the final zone, not for you to play, but just to give you a peek at what lies ahead, is such a brilliant touch at building excitement and tension. This is a game that will age as good as the finest of wines, and perhaps even better. I find myself replaying it a bit at least every year or so, and it may be one of the first games I encourage my baby boy to play with me as well. So there you have it, my essential top 10 games to play on Nintendo Switch Online. Now, I left out a ton of great games and a ton of great platforms. Nothing from the Sega Genesis made it, but that doesn't mean there aren't amazing games on there as well. These are just my thoughts, my preferences, but what are yours? What games do you think are the best on the service? What games or even platforms do you want them to add? I personally want more of the Wario Land games, and I would love to see the GameCube, Dreamcast, or Virtual Boy get added to the list as well. But let me know your thoughts below, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and as always, happy gaming.